Hello, I'm Nira Dale, District ELA Specialist for Florence City Schools. And I have the question, how will I use assessments? This is such a great question because no matter how good an assessment is, whether it's formative or summative, if we don't use the data from the outcomes of those assessments, then assessments become nothing more than tools for filling our grade book, as opposed to information that we can use as a prognosis for moving students forward in their learning. Effective teachers use classroom assessments in at least 4 different ways. As a blueprint for determining how you're going to develop your instruction. Secondly, as a vehicle for students to demonstrate their learning and their understanding of content. Also, assessments are tools for monitoring progress and planning next steps for future instruction. And then finally, and to me, one of the most important tools that assessments serve as is for giving meaningful feedback to students. Beginning with the end in mind, a blueprint, assessments, if you have quality classroom assessments that are aligned to your content standards and learning targets, these can be used to make decisions about which curriculum and instructional activities you're going to use in your everyday lessons. And these will also maximize possibilities for students to reach mastery. It's a blueprint, so that doesn't mean that you only want to design your lesson and activities around an assessment. However, you do want to make sure that there are certain structures that must be in place in order for you to reach mastery if those assessments are assessing in a quality way that are aligned to your standards. It's easier to create lesson plans when you know what those structures are, which parts have to be in place, as opposed to teaching several lessons throughout a unit and then determining at the end of the unit how we're going to assess the things that we've covered. The second way I mentioned that we use assessments is as a vehicle for students to demonstrate their learning and understanding. Quality assessments provide ways for them to show what they know or what they don't know relating to short-term and long-term learning targets. You do want to aim to provide a variety of ways for students to do this. Multiple choice tests and quizzes are great, especially when you're trying to, as a department, get quick data on where your students are, but also provide ways for students to write their thinking, not just dry written assignments, but use writing as a way for them to show their thinking. Sometimes you can see a lot more than you can from a multiple choice assessment. Also, you want to provide ways for them to authentically show their learning through performance tasks and meaningful projects, so that they can really apply and transfer their learning in multiple ways. The third thing I mentioned was a tool for monitoring progress. If we don't have, as teachers, ways to reflect and monitor progress of our students based on the assessment outcomes, we might be teaching, but that doesn't necessarily mean that our students are learning. So we don't want to be working hard and teaching our hearts out every day, and our students are not getting it due to us not realizing that they're not really making the progress that we think they're making. We're not noticing and monitoring where they are as learners. And the final thing I mentioned was a channel. Assessments provide a channel for giving meaningful feedback to your students, specific feedback. Remember, assessments, they're not just assessments of learning, but they should be assessments for learning. Hence, without helping students to understand gaps and maybe misconceptions behind their performance, they have little to no opportunity to retool their own thinking. Very similar to going to the pediatrician or the doctor. They see all the symptoms that are there, send the person home with the same symptoms, and not really helping them to understand what types of behaviors and actions they need to take to improve. So you want to make sure that as you give assessments, whether they're formative or summative, that the student understands what they know and what they don't know. John Hattie, I like his quote where he says, the most powerful and single modification that enhances achievement is meaningful feedback to students. I hope this was a helpful video for you, along with all the videos, and welcome again to Florence City Schools, and we are so happy to have you.